Today on our Capstone Podcast, we're going to discuss the impact COVID-19 has had on small businesses and unemployment in North Texas. I am Samuel Gomez, and together we have
Michelle Wen,
Jaylene Ramirez,
I'm Yanira Tagle,
and Kari Gray.
We'll get into how the pandemic has impacted small business owners in Denton and Grand Prairie. We'll also discuss Texas's unemployment numbers across the state and how it affects the USPS and the Moore County News Press. To start off, Jaylene is going to talk about student concerns at UNT and random testing.
As we all know, the coronavirus concerns have hit hard all across the country. Locally, students at the University of North Texas have expressed concerns about the lack of students following safety guidelines. I spoke to UNT freshman Grace Mutterer, who is living on campus. Mutterer said that she has seen groups of students not wearing face masks on campus. And while she follows the safety guidelines put in place by the university, she said she thinks it's very disrespectful because the reason you wear a mask is to protect others from getting the virus. Mutterer was not the only student to express concerns. Last semester, students were faced with the transition from in-person classes to online learning. One of the biggest letdowns was the cancellation of graduation ceremonies for students expecting to walk the stage in May. Fast forward to the start of this fall semester, students were upset with the university for holding regularly scheduled football games. And as you can imagine, some students attending football games complained about the lack of social distancing and the lack of students not wearing face masks or face coverings. This specifically felt like an insult to those who did not get a graduation ceremony or even have the chance to walk the stage. As for testing, UNT has held random testing sites across the campus 3 times a week. These tests are provided free of charge to asymptomatic students at the university. So far, it has been reported that 2,200 students have been tested both through random testing and the Health and Wellness Center. I spoke to Laura Klein, the Assistant Vice President for Wellness, who said out of these combined tests, only 100 students tested positive for the coronavirus. As for now, UNT is encouraging students to utilize their free random testing sites for asymptomatic students. Next, Sam is going to talk about small business closures and unemployment in Texas.
According to the end of August report from Yelp, 60% of business closures that occurred during the pandemic are now permanent. Yelp reports nearly 98,000 small businesses across the country have closed permanently in the same August 31st report. Locally, Denton has seen a few small businesses closures as well, including Free Play Arcade, Scrap Denton, and Wine Squared, which closed its doors permanently at the end of July. In a letter to the community, owner of Wine Squared, George Ferry, thanked the public for their purchases that they've made since March, which he said helped keep the lights on, the vendors paid, and employees home safe. Ferry urged the community to continue to support its neighbors and local businesses, and to respect what establishments have to do in order to survive and thrive. Next, Kari is going to talk about one Grand Prairie shop who struggles with staying open during the pandemic.
Thank you, Samuel. I met with a clothing vendor at the local Traders Village by the name of Belinda Bell during the first week of September, and things have not been looking too good for her. Her store is called JSID, and she has several of these stores throughout the DF Metroplex, from North Richland Hills to Mansfield. Since the reopening of the store back in April, her number of clients has dramatically decreased to having at most 20 customers in the 2 days that she's open, since Traders Village is only open on the weekends. Her revenue went from at most $4,000 a month to $1,500 a month. And this is a woman who manages her 2 sons' music career while struggling to pay rent. The first time we met, she expressed to me that she was denied a small business loan. And the second time I met her mid-October, she was denied once again. She broke down and told me she will have to close all of her stores indefinitely if she can't project great revenue for the coming holidays. It's really sad to see this happening to a woman who has her shops open since the 90s. And when I interviewed other vendors at the village who have been open as long as her, they're seeing great sales, and they actually believe that COVID was a blessing for their business. I really do hope that the holidays treat her well because no one could have predicted this pandemic, especially at the scale that it's at and how much it's prolonged for this many months.
The United States Small Business Association has given out long term, low interest loans for small businesses and nonprofits, but by now, all the funds have already been given out. Small businesses are left to fend for themselves by negotiating with their private loans. For example, they may have to rework repayment plans or loan forgiveness. According to the latest data from the Texas Workforce Commission, the unemployment rate for the state of Texas is now 8.3, higher than the national average of 7.7. That's up from August, which was 7.0. And for comparison, the unemployment rate for September 2019 was 3.4. Looking more closely at North Texas, the Dallas-Plano-Irving and Fort Worth-Arlington areas' unemployment rate is hovering around 7.4 to 7.6. Next, Michelle is going to go into further detail about unemployment in Texas.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Adding what you said earlier, the number of Texans filing for unemployment actually jumped to 860% around March 16th, and the phone lines and web servers at Texas Workforce Commission began to get overloaded, so a lot of people had trouble getting their unemployment benefits. I spoke to Daryl Reed, who is a senior at UNT, who got let go from her job at Barnes & Noble around mid-March of this year. And the company's policy furloughed employees who have worked there for at least 6 months, but those who worked there for less time, like Reed, who was actually just 1 week away from that 6-month mark, those employees just got let go indefinitely. And so Reed actually told me she applied to at least one job a day, but got no calls back or no emails back. And when she applied for unemployment, the initial statement she got was that she would receive $450 a week plus the extra benefits that the CARES Act provided. But when she called back to the unemployment office, since she wasn't seeing anything turn up in her bank account, they actually told her that her unemployment status was revoked. So unfortunately, she was not able to get any sort of benefits. And the IRS did announce the distribution of the $1,200 stimulus checks later that month, but unfortunately, many young people and college students like Reed did not qualify, so they didn't get that extra boost either. Luckily, as of September, Reed was able to get her job back. However, many other Texans still face other ongoing employment challenges, and Yanira will explain more about those difficulties in other areas of the state.
Thanks, Michelle. At the risk of joining the unemployment population, the members of the United States Postal Service are facing possible defunding. Although it's not a small business, defunding the post office will affect a lot of people. Not only will it affect the people that work for the United States Postal Service, but also small businesses. As of 2019, there were 633,104 employees at the United States Postal Service. I spoke to Bobby Rodriguez. She's a union representative for the USPS, and she said that her and many others have put everything into their career and have been there for years. She said that not only is the United States Postal Service important for her because it's her job, but because she uses it as a consumer as well. A small business that will be directly affected if the United States Postal Service gets defunded will be the Moore County News Press. The Moore County News Press is in Dumas, Texas, and it heavily relies on the post office. They mail out 5,950 papers per week. They also rely on the United States Postal Service to mail out bills to their subscribers and to receive the payments as well. Most of the money they receive is through the mail. If the United States Postal Service gets defunded, then they would have to scramble to find other ways to run their business. I spoke to editor Michael Wright, and he said that they would have to find a new method of development for their customers. They would do what they have to get the papers out, whether that means hiring carriers or delivering the papers out themselves. The customers outside of Dumas would be shifted to an online subscription or would be refunded. Most likely the paper would lose money because older readers wouldn't want the paper digitally. They would also have to address the whole issue about billing and collecting the payments, since that's how they get their money in.
Despite its flaws, Michael says it is still important to their operations and that they hope it gets sustained in the future.
Even though we are getting close to a year since the initial shutdowns, COVID-19 will still continue to affect small businesses, the USPS, the press, and UNT. Unemployment numbers have gone down, but many individuals will still experience the lasting effects of unemployment, such as eviction or even homelessness.
During this pandemic, it is important to shop locally to support small businesses. Since it's still ongoing, it is important to follow CDC guidelines, socially distance, and wear masks to keep those around you and yourself safe. This has been our Capstone Podcast. Thank you for listening. I'm Yanira Tagle,
Michelle Wynn,
Shailene Ramirez,
Samuel Gomez.
And Kari Gray.